And then Spinner's Pizza, family owned since 1994, specializing in hand-spun thin-crust Italian pizza, region's #1. So on your way home from the hike, just hit Dascom Road off Route 93 and say hi to Dolls and Pops and grab your sticker.
Yeah, and you have to tell Spinners, I'm sorry, I've been like putting the wrong link.
Oh.
I put a link to a pizza place in New Jersey for them on the show notes.
Can you imagine? Some people that showed up in New Jersey go, where's my sticker? Hey, where's my sticker?
I haven't even gone back to look. I went how many weeks I had that in the wrong link.
No, that's Italian. Where's my sticker?
So, sorry, Spinners. We'll correct that link.
Yeah.
I promise.
Well, you'll be swimming with the fishes.
State of New Hampshire. Welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast, where we discuss all things related to hiking and search and rescue in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Here are your hosts, Mike and Stump.
Crack a beer and welcome to episode 85.
Oh man, almost getting there. 100. It's creeping up slow.
We've surpassed our life expectancies.
I would think so. Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, I'm not really actually feeling like I am going to surpass it, though. My cold is back.
Oh, really? What do you have this time? Like nasal or respiratory? What's going on?
I had this pattern where I'll get sick and then I'll feel better, and then I get this persistent cough. And I feel like you took me out on that crappy day on the Algonquin Traverse, and that got me sick.
It's possible. Maybe something you picked up on the way. Well,
could be. But we have Sarah here tonight. So, Sarah, I have a question for you. I've been doing like the hot lemon tea and all that stuff, but like when you have a persistent cough, like what do you recommend to address it besides just tea?
Well, my first recommendation was going to be a tea, so there's that. I really love the traditional medicinals throat coat tea, and I'll usually put in some local honey with that and maybe some fresh lemon juice. I also really promote, and I am not a dietitian, this is not, medical advice, but this is what I do for myself and some clients do, is using some zinc or vitamin C as a supplement, and really just increasing like vitamin intake by food, if you will. So adding in some veggies. Also a big fan of elderberry syrup for like the cold and flu season.
Okay, yeah, I think we have some of that elderberry. I need to order some more kombucha too, because I feel like that ginger kombucha was good for me as well.
Fantastic. Sarah, any take on like oil of oregano or cinnamon or turmeric or any of these hardcore spices, which I have in my diet, but
not really. Not too much. I don't know a ton about oil of oregano or cinnamon. Turmeric I know is really great for anti-inflammatory purposes. I personally do either use turmeric in my just overall diet or supplement with it for like endometriosis, which we might get into. But it is helpful. Or even if you're like just feeling overall inflamed, I do think that turmeric is so powerful, as you said.
Yeah, neat.
All right, well, I apologize ahead of time if I don't hit my mute button and I cough on you guys tonight, but I'll try to be good. But some housekeeping stuff here, Stomp. So we have the holiday season coming up, so I think we're going to have this show coming out on the 9th. We got another show scheduled for the 16th, and then we're going to be off on the 23rd and 30th, and then we'll be back on January 6th. But you and Mrs. Stomp you guys might get drunk some night over the holiday season and drop something, or you might have a surprise.
It's probably guaranteed, so stay tuned.
Okay. And then the other thing I have is just a reminder, we are doing a buddy hike on January 14th. We've got a whole bunch of people signed up, and I'm going to be leading one group. I think Stomp's going to be joining us as well. We've got a couple of people, Julie from the Hiking Buddies, and a couple of other folks are going to be helping to split the group up. So we're going to go at different times, so we're not going to have too many crowds. But we will be going to Reckless Brewing after the event. So if you're around and you want to go to Reckless Brewing, I'm thinking we're going to be there around like 1:30 something.
Yeah, and I think the Fantasy Pants crew might be there as well if you haven't met them. Nice guys. So it should be a nice time.
Awesome. I don't know how I got roped into this, but hopefully nobody needs a rescue.
Oh, by the way, I was thinking maybe tossing out the idea of doing like a 100th episode hangout. Not like a show or anything like that, but just pick a location, probably Reckless, and just hang out and meet everybody and just chill. So maybe that'll get some traction and happen. That would probably be like in early spring, maybe April or May.
As long as I don't have to do any work for it, I'll just show up.
Okay. Hopefully you'll be over your cold. Oh, boy.
Exactly. All right, Stomp. So last week, Keith was a hit, you said.
Oh, my God, yeah.
You got a lot of good feedback?
A ton of feedback. Yeah, listeners really enjoyed that. Some people were saying it was the best guest ever, and I certainly had a great time.
No pressure, Sarah.
I'm sorry?
No pressure, Sarah.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll do fine, Sarah. But yeah, it was good. So a lot of good feedback, and some folks asking to have him on again. But he left me after the recording with a funny story I just wanted to share with everybody. He had actually showed up in the area really early. We were scheduled to record at 7, and he sat himself down at a local restaurant and just was killing a couple hours. And the waitress there was curious as to what he was all about and came up to him and was asking him, "Hey, what are you doing here? You know, you don't look like you're from the area." And long story short, he said, "I'm recording a podcast at the Woodpecker Studio." And of course, being a local woman, the waitress said, "Is that what's going in at the Woodpeckers?" So she was referring to the restaurant that's currently becoming like a fish market or a deli, that type of thing. So there's this new rumor around town now that the old Woodpeckers is going to be a fish market and a recording podcast studio. So how cool is that? Oh my God. So funny.
That is funny. Well, people would be very disappointed if they saw the Woodpecker studio, I think.
Yeah, it's a bit of a surprise. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not bad. All right, so moving on here, we got a couple of sort of miscellaneous things here. So I think about 2 months ago or so, we talked about Arlette Land, who had completed the 11 national scenic trails, and I don't know how many years it took her, but there's another person that has completed this recently, and his name is Patrick French. Yeah, he's a New Hampshire native.
Yeah, he's on number 10.
And he just completed this. He started in 2015 with the Appalachian Trail, and then he finished with the North Country National Scenic Trail in November. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty impressive. You've hiked from North Dakota to Vermont.
Yeah, and you know this guy from social media, apparently?
I know. So I was in like a hiking group with him, excuse me for coughing. And then he kind of I think he got into like the long distance hiking and kind of disappeared. So I know of him. Yeah. So, I still have to reach out to Arlette to see if we can schedule her to get in here, but maybe I can get Patrick to come on as well. But pretty impressive. So he said he had frostbite 3 times.
No big deal.
Which is pretty impressive that he was able to make it through that. So 7 years later, he has completed the whole thing.
And that was submitted by Runcast Run. Thank you very much. We're getting a lot of submissions, and I got to say it's really helpful for us developing these scripts to get these stories along the way. So keep at it. Much appreciated.
Great. And then, Stomp, you had put in a video that we'll post on the show notes about these devices that people put on their vehicles for getting traction.
Yeah,
So
it's a very interesting video.
I thought a 4-wheel drive was enough, but it seems like, yeah, what is it?
Well, in some cases, people rely on different forms of traction, whether it be claws or chains, or, to my surprise, this device called a snow sock, which is basically like a sleeve that covers, it's like a canvas sleeve that covers your tires. And this guy goes into a really deep dive on what is the best traction, what worked the best, what didn't work so great, how the braking was, and things like that. So like Mike said, we'll just give you the video and you can check it out. But it's a really interesting video. I learned a lot, actually.
Yeah, I watched the video. Like, I think the sock, it's basically the chains around the tires make sense to me. It seems like that helps with the
Oh, sure.
The grip, but the sock piece of it is, it's essentially putting fabric around your tires to get more grip, I guess. But it seems like a lot of times when they were doing the field tests, the fabric would just get shredded up. And it
True.
Not as effective. So I would go with the chains.
Agreed. Right. Yeah, for sure. It's just durability. But it was funny seeing fabric actually work.
Yeah. I don't know how realistic it is, but the chains also seemed a lot easier to get on and to stay on. So anyway, if you need that, if you have a steep driveway, good luck. But speaking of steep, we've got the Mount Washington Road Race. The lottery is opening up on February 14th. And then when do they typically make the announcement stop? In like March?
Yeah. It's about 4 weeks or so. And then they close it. Next to impossible to get in, but...
You going to sign up?
Oh, absolutely. I'm in. Yeah. I'll tell you what I've been up to shortly, but I'm in this year. I'm not hopeful, but I'm definitely going to try.
All right. Well, I'm going to sign up. I'm signing up for the lottery.
Okay.
Sarah, have you ever done this race? Are you a crazy person like we are?
I have not. I actually don't run on pavement.
Just straight
You
trail.
don't?
No, I have
Probably.
low bone density and stuff, so trails only, or dirt roads for me.
Well, the trick about the Mount Washington Road Race, the dirty little secret that nobody tells you about until you've actually run the races, you don't actually run a lot of it. I have. I've had times where I've run the whole thing, but the majority of the time, people will stop running after like a mile or two, and they just sort of do the power hike, or they'll do a transition from walking and running. So, but it is all pavement. So,
I'll leave it to you two. Maybe I'll hike up
Okay.
or something.
Oh, thanks.
it is worth hiking up to check out the race. Like I always
absolutely.
think it's enjoyable. So, but we'll keep you updated. But Stomp is going to ask you how we can lose some weight to get ready for running this. So we'll cover that later.
Sounds good.
And by the way, we have a couple of sponsors for this segment. EMS, your Northeast go-to for outdoor gear, guidance, education, and more since 1967. Check them out at ems.com. And we also have CS Instant Coffee, zero-waste instant coffee that comes in compostable packets, perfect for the trail and home. Check them out by going to the link in our show notes, www.csinstant.coffee.
Yeah, I'm planning an overnight on Mount Adams. I'm going to stay up at one of those cabins. I don't know if I'm going to... I seem to never be able to get Grey Knob. I usually get kicked out and get sent to the cold camp, but I'm going to try to take some of that coffee with me to see how it is.
Yeah, it's awesome for backpacking. I mean, can't beat it. It's the best option for those situations.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. So that's good. And then moving on to our next topic here, Stomp, we have a skull was found by a hiker. This man was missing 46 years. And then somebody was hiking and they found the skull.
That's a long time. It reminded me of the stories up here in New Hampshire of people that have disappeared and have not been found. But a hiker found a skull in 2004. Is this dated 2004? It's been identified as that of a Wisconsin man who went missing 46 years ago, sheriff said. So Roger Lee Ellis was 22 when he fled Wisconsin Rapids in 1976 after an arrest for possessing marijuana. Ellis told his family he was heading west because he didn't want to go to jail. In June 2004, a hiker found a human skull about 15 miles south of Red Lodge, Montana. They also found a femur and a pelvic bone. Apparently, DNA tests failed to turn up a match, but reanalysis this year using new techniques, identified the bones as belonging to this individual, Ellis. Pretty wild, huh? So it was a long, cold case.
Yeah, it seems like a very 1970s story. There's a lot of these cases where people just sort of wandered off. They died. The family never really tracked them down, and they just were just waiting to be identified.
Yeah, true. Absolutely.
All right, and then the next thing we have on our list here, Snob, you got a lot of sort of links you threw over my way. Christmas gifts for hikers. So there's a link for the 22 best Christmas gifts for hikers, and I'm not going to get a lot of detail here, but there's a couple of good.
It's just it's a good resource. So I mean, there's 22. And the ones that stood out to me personally, they make these pee rags. So when you're on trail and you have to go, a pee rag. I've never heard of those before. There were a couple others. Nick Wax popped up near the top, and a standout. This is a local business called Burgeon, which is located up in Lincoln. They made it for a warm, hot weather hoodie that they made, basically for desert conditions. So, congrats, Burgeon, on that plug.
Yeah, I always see Eric Todd Sweet. He's wearing all their clothes and plugging them, so it looks like they've got some good stuff. I just haven't picked any up.
Yeah, it's decent stuff for sure. And lastly, on this section here, Fish and Game is hiring, apparently, so go to the Fish and Game website. We'll give you the link, so if anybody's looking for an occupation or a career in fish and game conservation, now might be your time. Mike, move up to New Hampshire.
I'm not ready for a career change.
There you go. Yeah. Not yet. But all right, moving on to pop culture and miscellaneous stuff here. I found a video that I thought was an absolute riot. There is it's happened in Connecticut this week. There was a mother and a daughter. The daughter was like leaving her house, and I'll put the video in the show notes. It's a rabid raccoon that attacks the daughter, and then the girl's she's getting ready to walk out the door. She opens the front door. She's going to walk to her school bus, and a raccoon was rabid, grabs onto the girl's leg, and the girl immediately screams. You know what it is like when your daughters were little and they would get freaked out and scream. There is no noise when they would get rabid
that can be described. It's just a loud scream. So the mother comes running out in a panic. She grabs the raccoon, picks her daughter up with her other arm, throws the daughter inside the house. She's got the raccoon, and then she talks to somebody off camera, and she just screams, "It's a rabid raccoon, get in the house." So then she tries to throw the raccoon, but the raccoon wouldn't let go of her hand, so she screwed up the first one. Then the second one, she just completely yeeted this thing down the front yard and then ran inside. So it's just it's a comical video, which I thought was funny.
The animals are going nuts.
But I was proud of Mom. She protected her little one, and she took care of business.
That's all it takes. That's what you got to do.
Do you want to do this next one, Stomp? I think you're excited about this topic.
Cocaine Bear. This came to me from, I think it was Johnny Appleseed who listens to us. I had seen a couple stories about it just in passing, and I just didn't make the connection. I saw the original story about the bear that this bear got into a huge load of cocaine and just started attacking campers and backpackers and just going nuts. But apparently, according to this link, there's a movie coming out to theaters this February. And I guess it's going to be like a schlock film, just sort of tongue-in-cheek, making fun of it, the whole thing. But keep a lookout. Cocaine Bear is coming to a theater near you. Get the popcorn ready.
Yeah, and it's not a low-budget film. The girl that starred in Felicity is starring in this film. Mm-hmm. So it's legit actors and actresses in this thing.
Oh, I got the impression that it was definitely going to be like a dark comedy.
Yeah, I think it is, but I think it'll be well produced. But it got me researching. So the whole story behind this is that there was a drug thing that happened, and the guy was flying in an airplane, and he had to drop some drugs, and then the bear found the drugs and got into it. But this story has happened a number of different times. There was a case where somebody had dropped $10 million worth of drugs in an island called Sardinia a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. In that movie Valley Uprising that talked about rock climbing culture in Yosemite, there was a case in 1977 where drug dealers had dropped huge caches of, I think, marijuana that the climbers all found out about, and they climbed into these, like they had to bushwhack into these areas to get the drugs, and they were able to sell them and, you know, make enough money to live off of for a couple of years in Yosemite. So, yeah.
So the bear got into it.
It happens. The beer got into it.
Oh, boy.
And then sticking with Hollywood, the book Born to Run, which I did read. So this Born to Run book, as far as I can remember, this kicked off a barefoot running craze. It kicked off like the trail running culture.
Big time.
It was sort of like it was the book that inspired, I think, trail running and ultra running. And, you know, I think we've got a pretty well established sort of culture and competitive environment now. But back when this book came out, I think in the late 2000s, it was very niche thing, and it basically resulted in like a new running boom. So the book is called Born to Run, and there's going to be a new movie where Matthew McConaughey is going to be starring as this guy,
Micah True. Caballo Blanca. White Horse was his name. He was the lead guy that was living down in Mexico with the, I honestly forget the name of the tribe, but it's an ancient tribe that runs barefoot, and they run incredible distances. So, yeah, he's playing that lead role. And as people may remember, Micah passed away, unfortunately, in March of 2012. It was a cardiac event. So this will be interesting. There's no like set release date, but keep a lookout, because Born to Run was a very cool book. It wasn't even, for me, it was not so much about the barefoot thing, but it was more about finding your form when you're running and really maximizing your form to prevent injury and overstressing your joints. And it was just really influential for me as a runner. Made life a lot easier running, to be honest with you, because running's not the most enjoyable thing if you're doing it wrong. Yeah,
there was a nutritional aspect to that book too. There was like a native diet that they talked about. I can't remember the details.
Yeah, I think the tribe was Taramahu. I think it's coming to me now.
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah, great stuff. I don't even know who has my book. I gave it to somebody, and it's missing in action.
Yeah, I'll have to look. I may reread that. Okay. And then the only other thing you have here, you got a couple more. So The Last of Us looks incredible. What is that?
Last of Us was a video game, but it's coming out on HBO in January, and it's basically an apocalyptic, end of the world type of scenario. But this is by the makers of Chernobyl. And it looks actually really good for like a video game remake. So I'm anxious about it. I can't wait to check it out and see what's out there. Then, of course, Harrison Ford's like on a friggin' roll. He's got Indiana 5 coming out in 1932. I don't know if anybody's watching Yellowstone, but it's pretty enjoyable stuff. So he's coming out with Helen Mirren. And that starts, I think, in December. So a lot of stuff going on in pop culture.
Very exciting. All right, and then the last thing here, Stomp, and let's see what Sarah's opinion is on this. So, Sarah, Stomp found this recipe.
Oh, Sarah's not going to like this.
She's not going to like this. I think she's going to be mad. No, I'm just kidding. But he found this recipe for what he thinks is a good winter hiking snack. So, I'm already I'm thumbs down on this. So, saltine toffee cookies. So...
It's something I could make. That's what's great about it. If it's any more complicated than this recipe, check me out. Nope, Mrs. Stomp will back me up on that.
It's 4 ounces of saltine crackers, a cup of butter, a cup of brown sugar, 2 cups of chocolate chips, and then 3/4 of chopped pecans.
Well, the pecans are keepers.
Yeah, it looks like it doesn't look healthy. I don't know, Sarah. What do you think?
I mean, you're getting in some carbohydrate and sugar, which sugar is a carbohydrate. It's a simple carbohydrate. And there's fat in there and a little bit of protein. So from a macronutrient perspective, it's actually not terrible.
Sort of balanced.
And when we're hiking, we need a lot of calories on trail, which we'll talk about. So honestly, as a hiking snack, I would not nix this. As long as we're getting in some other foods as well.
Right. See, I was thinking
maybe like nutritional value.
Like in particular, this stands out to me as a winter snack where you need that fat for heat generation. So that's why it appealed to me. Like, wow, that's actually sort of a clever idea.
Yeah, as long as they don't freeze.
What do you mean?
with winter hiking, I feel like nutrition is so much harder because our food just freezes on trail. So having choices that maybe don't freeze as easily.
Okay, but you're not losing nutritional value if it freezes.
No, absolutely not.
Okay, yeah, I was just curious. Cool.
Yeah, and that's something that people don't think about a lot of times, but in winter, you do have to be more careful. Like, I've probably pushed it a couple of times where I've had like Cliff Bars and like Milky Ways and stuff like that, and they're frozen, and I'm not so worried about like eating frozen stuff because it's fine if you can get a bite and let it melt in your mouth, but I get concerned, especially as I'm getting older, like I don't want to crack a tooth or have some sort of a tooth situation going on when I'm out there on the trail, because you are risking, if you've got to like chomp on some frozen food, it is dangerous out there.
Yeah, it'll just enhance your look, Mike. It'll be cool.
Yeah, my teeth aren't that great to start with, so I don't want to damage them even worse.
Oh, well. All right. So we have one donation. What Donna Hamilton Photographs donated 5 coffees. Thank you, Donna. Super cool. Very much appreciated. All donations go towards the upkeep of the website and the costs for having guests on and our podcast platform. So donations are cool. Thank you.
All right. So welcome to episode 85 of the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast. This week, we welcome Sarah Lacourse. Did I say that name correctly? Last name?
You did.
All right, Sarah Lacourse. So Sarah is the host of her own excellent podcast called Pursuing EndurancePodcast. She is a strength and conditioning coach and an expert in training, nutrition, and White Mountains hiking. So if you're a hiker or trail runner looking for advice on getting stronger, eating better, or just looking to build a sustainable approach to hiking, settle in for a fun discussion with Sarah. And then later in the show, we will catch up on some recent search and rescue news. And then I pulled some New Hampshire / White Mountains history tidbits that we'll go through. As I've been driving around New Hampshire, I've been like grabbing different like historical marker signs and adding them to my list to go over. So I pulled a couple of those. So looking forward to talking about that. So I'm Mike.
And I'm Stomp. Let's get started.
All right, let's get started. So you got a couple of sponsors you want to throw in here, Stomp?
Yeah, first at Reckless Brewing. Thank you so much, guys. Great sponsors, supporting us since day one, essentially. We'll enjoy the best food, craft beer, and fun. Just 15 minutes from Franconia Notch, many of the 4K footers, and less than 10 minutes from the infamous Five Corners. And then Spinner's Pizza. Family owned since 1994, specializing in hand-spun thin crust Italian pizza, region's #1. So on your way home from the hike, just hit Dascom Road off Route 93 and say hi to Dolls and Pops and grab your sticker.
Yeah, and you have to tell Spinners, I'm sorry, I've been like putting the wrong link.
Oh,
I put a link to a pizza place in New Jersey for them on the show notes.
Can you imagine? Some people are showing up in New Jersey go, where's my sticker? Hey, where's my sticker?
I haven't even gone back to look. I wonder how many weeks I had that in the wrong link.
No, that's Italian. Where's my sticker?
So sorry, Spinners. We'll correct that link.
Yeah.
I promise.
Well, you'll be swimming with the fishes.
All right. So this is the part of the show where we talk about beer.
Yeah.
Not the beer that can attack you, but the beer that you drink.
Yeah. Anything good, Mike? Are you on?
I'm drinking a Stoneface IPA. So we talked about Stoneface last week.
Excellent. I've got one of my favorite local breweries now. I mean, if you consider Vermont local, but it is the Burlington Beer Company, and I'm enjoying a Stainless Forest Double India Pale Ale, which is absolutely delicious. This company's super cool, 8.2%. And the graphics are always the eye catcher for me. It's super cool.
That's mostly how I buy my beer too. Is I look at like the cool pictures on the outside of the beer, and then that's how I pick.
Right. Or if it matches the show topics.
Yeah. I am proud of you though, Stomp, because I remember back when we started, you were like anti-IPA, and now you're all about it.
Well, I think that the difference was the double. Standard IPA, I'm still not very fond of. So, double, triple, quadruple, quintessent IPA, just boost the number up, and I'm all in.
All right. Well, Sarah, I don't know. Are you into drinking or not?
I like cider and wine. I have some electrolytes tonight. No, I can't drink beer. I can't do gluten.
Oh, you can't. Got it. So does beer by definition always have gluten in it?
Unless it's a gluten-free beer, which some companies do have, but they're not really good in my humble opinion.
Okay. So you just stick to the ciders and the wines.
Yeah, dry cider, red wine. That's my jam.
Awesome.
That works. All right. So we're going to go over some recent hikes here, Stomp. So you had to bail on a hike? What happened here?
Oh, I did. I was just... It was after that heavy-duty rainstorm. I sound like a broken record. Like, it just rained for 2 days straight. But it sort of wiped out the base that we were so excited about a week and a half ago. And it revealed this really thick layer of glare ice. So I wanted to just get some cardio and zip up Tecumseh, which is like my new fave at the moment. I absolutely love it. The bang for the buck is just awesome. But the glare ice was so intense. It was like two things. I didn't want to ruin my $80 frickin' Catulas, and B, I just was not in the mood to rock hop the whole way up and down. So I was like, I'm out of here. By the second river crossing, I bailed out. I'm like, nah, I'm good. So yeah, pick your poison. I just like, nah.
Yeah,
risk averse.
I think I'm gonna. And I understand the Cotula thing because I think I've done a bunch of hiking like early season, and then I did a bunch of hiking late season last year, and I had like my rock spikes and then I had my good spikes, but then they just got intermingled somehow, so I have two pairs.
Yeah.
And I was going up, I hiked up Moosilauke. I just did one trip this week, and even on some of the ice I was slipping, and I think that I'm using spikes that are just old or dull or whatever.
Sure.
I don't know.
Are they the micro spikes versus the crampons?
They're the Cthulhu micro spikes. That's all I use. I don't use the Hill Sounds, the thicker one. I have, if I need real crampons, I have Gravel G10s that I'll use, but I barely ever use those. So I use the Cthulhu micro spikes. I have two sets, and I was separating one, using it as like my rock spikes, and then the other was like only for winter, but they got all intermingled, and now I don't know which is good and which is bad.
Yeah, honestly, I think the wear time's probably all the same, but you just get more bang for the buck with those deep teeth with the Hill Sounds. I have a pair of older micro spikes as well, but I just didn't have them on that trip. I'm like, nah, I'm not going to kill my teeth on this. But it's a weird time of the year. It's like there's nothing for snow here at the moment. Waterville Valley's blowing snow, but Weld Sticky Loop is pretty much empty now again, so that little bit of base that we were just starting to get is gone. It's really sort of a bummer.
Yeah, I don't know. So I had a wellness day at work on last Friday, and my old college buddy Sean, he's starting to get into the 4,000 footer. So I think this was his 7th hike. So I met him at the Glencliff Trail, and he wanted to do Moosilauke. He's actually been talking about doing it for a couple of weeks, and the weather wasn't great. So I was like, I got the day off. So we met around 9 o'clock, and then he brought his dog, Winston the Wonder Dog, which was an English Springer Spaniel. This dog was awesome. I haven't really hiked with a dog before, so it was super fun for me. But we had to put on spikes around 3,000 feet, I would say. And then the last, how there's about an 800-foot climb. You go to like probably 3,600 feet up to 4,400 feet when you get to the South Peak Junction, and that gets steeper. And there was some sections of ice there where you definitely needed, micro spikes, and it was like clear ice, and I was slipping a little bit even in my spikes, but made it up no problem. The dog was like amazing. So that was fun, but he kept like running up the trail and then coming back to check on us. So the dog probably hiked like 3 times the amount of miles we did, which was fun.
That's so cool. Dog's awesome on trail.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Dog, and it was nobody around, so the dog was off leash. I don't know. It's not my dog, so I was just there. But the dog did great. He would come back on recall, and the only issue the dog had really was he had a couple of times where snow would build up inside his paws, so he would come like limping back, and then we'd have to like rip the snow out of his paws, and then he was fine. But I posted some pictures on the Instagram, and it was so much fun hiking with a dog. I want to do it again.
Oh, it's super cool. Sarah, have you been out?
Yeah, I went out on Sunday and hiked Hale via the Fire Wardens Trail, and Haystack Road was still open as of that point, so that was a nice little treat this time of year. But yeah, conditions are all over the place.
Yeah.
It was a winter wonderland up top and frozen mud, wet mud, running water at the bottom. And then yesterday ended up staying a little bit lower and hiking Willard, which you could have used ice skates on. That might have actually worked better than micro spikes. They were it was hard to get traction. And then the Sugarloafs off of Zealand Road, which you didn't need spikes on.
Wow.
So the stark difference between those just by how much traffic Willard gets and how much less the Sugarloafs get. But yeah, so it's been an interesting couple of days.
And Zealand's closed, right? So you had to do the road walk?
Yeah, Zealand is closed.
Is it fair to say, like, if Haystack Road is open and you take the Fire Wardens Trail up to Hale, that's got to be the shortest, easiest 4,000 footer, do you think?
So Fire Wardens, I think it was 6.5 miles, my watch said, from parking at the North Twin Trailhead, whereas if you were to take Halebrook Trail, if Zealand Road was open, that would be shorter. But I think Fire Wardens is arguably easier.
Yeah.
So I would say
it's a very steady climb.
Fire Wardens or maybe Tecumseh from Triple I instead of the ski area or Wambeck. Those would probably be the easiest.
Yeah. I have to do that whole area for my winter 4,000 footer this year, so I'm thinking through my strategy. I talked a little bit about that on the last show, but it's good to know Haystack is still open, but it's definitely going to be closed by the time winter comes.
It might even be closed as of today. I have a friend in the Forest Service, and it sounds like it might be closed now. So today is Tuesday, December 6th.
Well, speaking of closed roads, Mike, I just want to tell you this. I jogged up from Triple I Road in Waterville to the Osceola Trailhead. I was really proud of myself. That was like the first big jog. Like it was, like I mean business with this Mount Washington thing, man. I hope we get in. I really do. But it was nice. Pushing it. It's like...
Do you listen to music when you run stuff?
I was listening to a podcast, but it's funny. It's, I still have the mental will because of the consistent heavy pack hiking, but my body's yelling and screaming and my heart's screaming, but you can work through that. And I was actually really proud. I'm like, man, I can pull this off. And again, I'm strictly going uphill. I'm not running downhill because as people know, I have a hip replacement and my left hip is probably a couple years away from fading out, but I'm honestly comparably between heavy pack hiking and what I did to get to the Osceola Trailhead was comparable, if not easier. So I'm really encouraged that I'll be able to pull off this run. I just want to do it one more time.
Yeah, and I think honestly, like the Mount Washington Road Race, even if you power hike and you're maintaining like 15 to 16 minute miles or something like that, like you finish within a reasonable amount of time. You run the first 2 miles and then power hike.
Absolutely, yeah, that's the trick. That's the dirty secret. So.
All right, so Sarah, we're up to your segment here. Are you ready for your big moment?
Sure am.
It's time for Slasher's Guest of the Week. Very cool. Very cool. Very, 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 very cool.
Well, just give us a second here. Stomp's got a couple of sponsors he wants to throw in here.
Sarah, do you deal with back sweat?
Not really.
Oh, well,
You don't sweat?
I glisten.
Just in case you do.
You're not working hard enough.
Sorry.
Back sweat sucks, so let me tell you about it. In all types of weather and hikes, not only is it uncomfortable, sweat is a risk factor, causing your core temperature to fluctuate if it doesn't evaporate off your back. Check out Vaucluse's Cool Dry Backpack Airflow Frame, a backpack accessory that installs in your favorite pack, size 18 liter to 65 liter, and creates an airflow gap between you and your pack. Whether you're in hot or cold temps, even if you have a pack with a curved frame, the Cool Dry frame is a real game changer. So visit VaucluseGear.com, a link will be in the show notes, to order your pack today. And then Fieldstone Kombucha, New England's premier Craft Kombucha, Mike's favorite, ships to New Hampshire. Check out Fieldstone Kombucha online for delicious seasonal flavors and a kombucha style beloved of skeptics and enthusiasts alike. The perfect non-alcoholic post-hike drink. Shipping available for retail and wholesale. Catch them at the Tuscan Village. I always want to say Tucson, but Tuscan Village Holiday Market in Salem, New Hampshire from December 8th to 11th. Or you can visit them at fieldstonekombuchaco.com. All right, let's get to it.
So, Stomp, me and Sarah ran into each other on the trail like back in May of 2021. Yeah. Right after we had started the show, I ran into you on Mount Field or Willie? I can't remember.
Field, yeah.
And I can't remember, we were talking about a backpack. I can't remember if I had just bought a backpack and you were asking about it, or if you had a backpack and I was asking you about it. I can't remember.
I can't remember either. I want to say it might have been me. I was with my friend Katie and we had the Ultimate Direction fast packs on. So I feel like it might have been you asking us, but I do not remember either.
Yeah, that would make sense because I had my I'm very sentimental about my gear, so I had a Deuter day pack that I was very I finished the 4,000 footers with it, and I was like, I'm never gonna get rid of it. And then I had finally decided I was gonna get this Ultimate Direction fast pack. So I think you had it, so I might have just asked you about it. And then Stomp, it was the early days of the podcast, so I felt kind of douchey, but I also was like, I'm just gonna put a plug in. And then she was like, oh, I think I've heard of your show, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited.
That's so funny. It's the favorite drop. Hey, you know who I am?
Hey, I host a podcast.
Too funny.
Anyway, but Sarah, why don't you introduce yourself, give a little bit of background, talk a little bit about your work, talk about your connection to hiking, and then you also host a podcast, so maybe talk a little bit about your podcast as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi, I'm Sarah Lacourse.
Hi.
I am a certified personal trainer and certified sports nutritionist. And so I work one-on-one with clients doing personal training in the Mount Washington Valley area. And then I primarily work virtually with mainly mountain endurance athletes and enthusiasts around strength training and sports nutrition. And I love it. It's so great to be able to kind of work with individuals that are very similar to myself in their hobbies. And outside of work, I really enjoy hiking, obviously, and I'm a big fan of weightlifting. I've been lifting since I was 15, 16 years old, and also really love writing and podcasting. And so my podcast is the Pursuing EndurancePodcast, where we have conversations around strength and sports nutrition, really, again, around mountain endurance activities, and also eating disorder recovery and entrepreneurship. So it is a mixed bag type of podcast.
Great. And did you get into this through college, or is this something you picked up later on in life? Can you talk about how you got interested in this?
Yeah. So in college, I studied neuroscience and psychology, and then I minored in nutrition, which was primarily sports nutrition. And then kind of, I would say, getting me into the field that I'm working in now has been a kind of combination of factors. I developed an eating disorder when I was 11. And so that whole experience and going into recovery when I was 20, 21 years old. And so I've now been in remission for about almost 10 years. It'll be 10 years in May. So pats on back. And then I grew up competing nationally in jump rope and was involved in different sports growing up, and then getting into lifting, becoming a personal trainer, working with a personal trainer. So it's just all of these different factors have really come together to give me this very comprehensive outlook on how I then approach coaching.
Interesting. And then at a high level, with your background, I guess first thing I'm curious about is two things actually out of this that I do want to talk about. One is, so you basically spent your formative years growing up with an eating disorder. Can you talk? I think there's a lot of us, I have 3 daughters, and I don't know, I haven't had to deal with it personally, but I do know that a lot of their friends and a lot of family members outside of our direct family have had eating disorder challenges that they've had to deal with. Can you talk a little bit about, I guess, the approach if you have somebody in your family or a loved one, or even if you're personally struggling yourself, where do you start as far as trying to move towards a path of recovery from eating disorder?
Yeah, I think the first thing that's going to come into play is the individual's age, of course. So if they're under 18, especially if they're in early adolescence, obviously the parents are going to have a lot more kind of interplay in the treatment options versus if somebody is over 18 or even into mid or later adulthood, because eating disorders really do affect individuals, male and female, of the entire age range. And I think they're often thought of as something that younger girls deal with. And while they do, it is definitely many more people outside of that population as well. And so I would say the first thing is that an individual really does need to be ready to work on this and getting past this and finding a path to recovery and healing. However, providing support while they're not in that space is essential and can move them into that space. So providing somebody with maybe a therapist or a support group, and really working on language if you're somebody, a friend or family that is that knows somebody with an eating disorder. So to really not talk about body image, calories, things that could be triggering, things of that nature could be helpful just to help them not move backwards or to trigger them. And then as somebody moves into recovery and is, getting the tools, learning the tools to help themselves and move along this path of healing, knowing that from the outside, so from friends and family, that it's not an overnight thing, it's not even a year thing, and that even though they might quote unquote look healthy and look better, that it is really a lifelong journey, and just to know that that's part of their experience and that's not a bad thing and it's not something to look down on, but it's part of their human experience, and so their outlook might be a little bit different.
Interesting, yeah. And I know it's a very common issue, and I don't think that it's not one of those issues where people are, I think, as comfortable talking about it. And maybe it's gotten a little bit better over the years, but I still sort of feel like it's very often something that you're not supposed to talk about. And I don't know, maybe that's a good thing, is you don't want to, well, obviously, like, I would never say anything to somebody that wasn't directly in my family, but it's still something that I think a lot of people struggle with. And I would imagine that if you're a parent of a child that's struggling with that and you've never dealt with it yourself, like, you don't even know where to start.
Absolutely. And I think that too, with the pandemic in the last couple of years, eating disorders and other mental health issues are becoming more and more prevalent. So having a better understanding and being open to conversations around it is really essential for anybody that is dealing with it or their friends and family.
Yeah, exactly. So just moving on to another topic here, and I know that there's never a one-size-fits-all when you're talking about training and strength and nutrition, but at a very high level, can you give us like a basic strategy for a baseline nutrition? What are some of the best practices you recommend for people just in general if they want to start sort of transitioning into being a little bit more thoughtful about their nutrition?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is to just really take a step back and become aware around the way that you're feeding or fueling your body. And so how are you eating when you're in your day-to-day life? How are you eating on trail or during other activities, before, during, and after activity, to really provide your body with the nutrients that it needs? So really just, again, taking a step back and seeing what your baseline is at now and not judging yourself for it, not creating any like, I need to do this, I need to do that, and just looking at it comprehensively and asking, what's working for me? What do I think is not working for me? And then taking baby steps to maybe change that if it needs to be changed at all. And in general, kind of the bigger factors that I look at with individuals, or kind of the top quote unquote mistakes that I see clients make, is that they're not eating enough calories in general across the board on a day-to-day basis. And then if we are looking specifically at somebody who's doing these higher level endurance pursuits, I know that's kind of probably the audience, right, that we're working with here. They're not eating or fueling before, during, and after, so pre, intra, and post activity appropriately. So we might be seeing things such as fatigue, bonking, low blood sugar, headaches, nausea, not recovering well, all of that. So really just kind of
other guests have said that.
Yeah. So taking a look at that and making sure we're giving the body what it needs, because it's like, you don't let your car run on empty, right? So we don't want our bodies to run on empty either.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then are there any sort of strategies that you say for, men, women, certain age around supplements and vitamins? Like I know I've always I've gone back and forth. Like sometimes my doctor will be like, you got to have a multivitamin, and then vitamin D was a big thing. Like can you give your thoughts around like what the baseline is for supplements or vitamins you think people should be taking, or is that just so individual that you can't recommend anything?
It's so individual, and I always say on my own podcast, I don't know you, but I can give kind of some general guidance. So as a sports nutritionist, I always say, let's look at your diet first. And by diet, I mean diet as a noun. So the way that you eat, not diet as a verb. So not being on a diet, just how you eat as a human. And let's look at getting in enough macronutrients, so carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, and then micronutrients, so vitamins and minerals first from your overall diet and from food. And then if we maybe are struggling to get enough protein, that's a big one. For example, maybe supplementing with a protein powder or protein bars. And then another big one I see, especially for endurance athletes and enthusiasts, is to supplement with electrolytes, especially in the summer season when it's more hot and humid, or even in the winter because we are sweating enough to really still need to utilize those.
Makes sense. And then just switching up to, the other thing I wanted to ask you is sort of the balance between strength training and cardio. So we'll talk about this later, but like I'm a cardio junkie. I hate strength training. But from your perspective, is it a balance between the two? Is strength more important than cardio? Can you talk about your views or what the science says about that?
Yeah, so it depends really on the individual and their goals, but I'll speak on a couple of things. The first is if you're somebody who, like yourself, is a cardio junkie, I would say you could benefit from some strength training just to provide your body with more tools to be able to then perform well in your endurance training. So really strengthening your body in different planes of motion and different movement patterns can be helpful to prevent injury, for example. And then, if you're somebody who is wanting to focus on strength and nutrition, or not strength and nutrition, strength and endurance equally, you might want to take like a seasonal approach to training. So for example, if you're doing more endurance output activity in the summer months, focusing on that in the summer more and reducing strength, versus in the winter, you would increase strength and reduce endurance, just for example.
Got it. Yeah. And I have actually, I have been going to these. So my wife is more of a strength training person. So she has this Jill. Hello, Jill, if you listen to the show. I think she might listen. My wife has a group of friends that they all work at a private trainer, and we do like an hour session where, they'll make you do planks, and we do burpees, and we do like the ropes, those heavy rope things that you have to do, and then we do boxing training and stuff. And we have to do the planks, and I can't do the planks for like more than a minute or so, but I have been trying, but I really, honestly, I hate it. I hope Jill's not listening, but I hate the strength training. It's so hard, but it is I think it is helping though. I'm just so weak in my upper body. It's ridiculous.
But you'll gain strength. You just have to work on it.
Yeah, I know. It's just so much easier to just go running for 5 miles and say, I did something.
I know. I get that.
Yeah. Anyway. But Sarah, so just switching over to your hiking, can you talk a little bit about when did you get into hiking? Can you talk a little bit about sort of your focus? Are you a list person? Winter hiking? Can you just give us a little bit of background in that area?
Yeah, I got into hiking really in 2016. However, I grew up camping, going hiking on small hikes. Actually, Willard, I think, was my first hike, either that or Black Cat Mountain in my early childhood years. And then a friend had asked me to go on a hike with her back in 2016 in July, Liberty and Flume, actually. And so I went on that, not really knowing anything about the 4,000 footers, anything about hiking. I just babysat for her family, and she was in her 40s. I was early 20s, and I was like, yeah, great, I can handle that. And I got hooked. And the weekend after, I ended up hiking Willie, Tom, and Field with my friend Amanda, and she was working on her 4,000 footers. But at that point, again, I had no idea what they were, and I just loved hiking, and it was so helpful for me to be outside and in that kind of outdoor environment. And so I slowly just began doing these hikes, and then I learned what the 4,000 footers were. And I remember looking at the Bonds and Owl's Head and thinking, there's absolutely no way that I can hike 20 miles in a single day. That's absolutely ridiculous. Like, my legs are going to fall off. And here I've done them multiple times now, which is just incredible and humbling. And in terms of the list, so I've completed the 48 multiple times, and I'm hoping to finish my winter 48 this year. I have the long and high ones, or long and tall ones left, if you will. And so Northern Prezzies, Bonds, Owl's Head, things of that nature. But I'm looking to finish that this year, and have been 4-season hiking since July of 2016. And I'm kind of casually gridding, as I like to put it. So I have my Excel sheet, I've tracked it all, but for me, hiking needs to be fun. It needs to be enjoyable. I love going out with folks. I live alone. I work from home primarily. So going out on solo days is not really my jam. And I love good weather because I can always shift around my work schedule to work on the rainy, crappy days and hike on the good days. So that's my MO. But yeah, I finished June and November so far, which November is entertaining to me because it's not the best month to hike. And then, yeah, June of 2020, my friend Jess and I actually took it upon ourselves to hike all of the 48 in a single month because we needed something to take our minds off of the pandemic. So that finished June out pretty quickly. But yeah, that's kind of my hiking background and accolades.
Great. Do you focus mostly on 4,000 footers, or have you done like the 52 with the view list or anything up in like Maine or anything like that?
I have not done any hikes in Maine yet, none of the 4,000 footers at least. And I've hiked Killington in Vermont, and then I've hiked about maybe half or 2/3 of the 52 with a view. So kind of working on that. Have hiked all of the Belknaps. I love the Belknaps actually in the shoulder season because they're usually melted out or don't have snow yet. And otherwise, yeah, 4,000 footers, or I live in the Mount Washington Valley, so a bunch of just smaller hikes that are not on any lists around here.
Got it. No, I'm curious because eventually I want to move to that area, or maybe even on the other side where Stomp lives. But when you wake up and you're like, all right, I want to go hiking, like, do you just choose that day, like where you're going, or do you pick the night before, or how do you decide what mountains you're going to?
If it's something bigger or a day that I want to focus on a grid peak, then I'll usually pick the day before or a couple days before, or even just have a great weather hike option or a not ideal weather hike option. And then in terms of smaller things, I have a list that I really love for my local hikes. So Boulder Loop is a great one, or hiking up to Champney Falls and just the falls, not going any further than that, or sometimes hit Middle Sister. Hedgehog is another good one. So kind of depends on the style of hike, if you will, when I decide and how I decide.
Got it. Yeah. I always was kind of curious about that. Like, if you have the luxury to like live right in the middle of the mountains, you can just basically wake up in the morning and pick your poison, which is nice.
Yeah, it's nice not having the drive. I used to live in Newmarket until October of 19, and I do not miss the 2 hours-ish of driving back and forth.
Yeah, I find that like the Ossipes and the Sandwich Range right now for me, when my father-in-law shuts his place down in Maine, those are the Ossipes and the Sandwich Range are nice for me because it's just, an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20 minutes up from the seacoast area. It's a little bit easier than the longer drives on the 93 side. But yeah, I'm jealous. I wish I didn't have those drives. And do you have a favorite hike, favorite mountain that you'd like to go to?
Oh gosh. In terms of the 4,000 footers, I would say my favorite mountain is West Bond, although I also really love Isolation. And non-4,000 footers, I really love the Sugar Loaves. Honestly, they're so beautiful and it's such a short hike.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Sugar Loaves are the best foliage hike in the Whites, just because you're sort of dropped into the foliage.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And then when it comes to winter hiking, we've been sort of touching on winter hiking and safety. Your gear choices, do you tend to stay with your sort of trail running gear, or do you go with heavier gear in the winter? Can you talk a little bit about your view on going light versus heavy, depending on the weather and the conditions?
Yeah, like you said, depending on weather and conditions, it definitely depends. And also depending on the hike. If I'm doing something such as Willard or the Sugarloaves or Boulder Loop, it's one of these smaller ones that I really know and have done probably over 15 times, I will usually take trail running gear. So my little Solomon pack that is, I think, a 12 liter, although it definitely holds more than that, and like a waterproof mid shoe that's not insulated. But I will not do that if the weather is not appropriate for that. So it really does depend. And then when I'm working on like the 4,000 footers, definitely being in insulated boots, usually, unless it's, springtime, shoulder season where the temperature is higher, but carrying the gear that if something happens, I'll be okay. Hopefully.
Well, and then do you typically, so you don't do solo hiking, you typically hike with friends, or how do you generally manage that?
Yeah, I tend to hike with friends. I have a bunch of different people that I hike with, and everybody has different availability, which works out nicely. I do enjoy solo hiking, but again, like I said, living alone, working from home, I get a lot of solo time. So I do enjoy the social aspect of getting out with friends. I do typically go one-on-one, or like a maximum of 3 people is definitely my preferred, but solo hiking is also nice for that, kind of getting into my intuition, which is helpful from a business perspective, if you will. So it's a mix.
Makes sense. And then, so we've had a gentleman on the show, Martin Pisani, who's a friend of mine and Stomps, who his, he's brought to us a lot of advice and perspective on this idea of, basically maintaining an active lifestyle well into your older years. And I've tried to sort of model that a little bit with what I've done over the years. Like, I used to be much more competitive with triathlons and marathons, and what I found was that I would chronically overtrain, and I would get injuries, and then I wouldn't be able to do the things I love to do, cycling and hiking and stuff like that. So I've dialed back my intensity of my workouts as far as running goes to limit the amount of injuries that I deal with the idea that I want to stay mobile and, active well into my retirement years, 70, 80, 90 years old. And I think that when I'm reading on some of your website and things like that, I think that's a similar goal where you're looking at this from the long term, but you're focusing more on strength training maybe than just using hiking as the main path for getting to that goal. But can you talk a little bit about your perspective on how you manage sort of active lifestyle for the long term?
Absolutely. So with coaching, I take a very holistic, so whole body, whole person approach. And my goal is always to create long-term sustainable habits and really focus on that long game. So again, that mentality that we're able to do these things, whether it be strength, endurance, long-term throughout our life. And of course, depending on the season or age or health factors, other factors, we might need to take a season off, or there's going to be changes. But overall, we're still able to participate in these activities that we find so much enjoyment in throughout our life. And so finding a way to create these sustainable habits and not fall into the traps of overtraining or overreaching and then getting injured and having to take that pause. And of course, injuries can happen, like fluke injuries, but overall, really trying to approach these activities of strength and endurance sustainably long term.
Got it. And then the physical fitness industry overall, I think, can be intimidating. Some people are just sort of like, I don't want to go to a gym, or I don't want to work with a trainer because I don't know where to start and they're going to judge me. Can you talk a little bit about, people that are just getting right off the couch into a healthy lifestyle, or talk a little bit about your perspective on how you flip that switch to get people to just sort of start saying, like, I really want to get focused on my health and wellness?
Okay, so yeah, really kind of looking at that long game approach and being able to use those little wins that we're getting to be able to motivate us further. Because when we're first getting into something, whether it be hiking, whether it be trail running, whether it be strength training, we're completely new to it. And so approaching it with any type of mentality of, I'm going to be here in a month, or I'm going to be here in 6 months, isn't super sustainable, and really just letting ourselves enjoy the process, as cliche as that sounds, and using this whole process as just this giant learning curve and being really gentle with ourselves throughout it can be so helpful. And I would also say I really like the concept of habit stacking. So what habit stacking is, for anybody that hasn't heard of this, is using a habit that you currently have really ingrained that is just part of your daily routine, and then putting on top of that, so before or after, a task or something that you would like to make a habit so that it is easier to do. So for example, when you shower at night, once you get out of the shower and you're in your pajamas, taking out your clothes the next day for your hike and getting everything together if you're new to hiking. That way in the morning, you don't have to have those decisions, because we have so many decisions throughout the day that we have to make. So if we can reduce the amount of decisions and reduce that decision fatigue, that can help us really start to create new habits that then can become long-term sustainable habits.
Got it. That makes sense. And then as far as people that, are just starting off, like, what do you typically recommend for them? I'm assuming that it's just, get moving and get comfortable with, being more consistent about either strength or cardio workouts on a daily basis. Do you typically tell people, like, you're going to have to work out every day for a short period of time? Or do you just say, like, hey, let's do 3 days a week?
I usually try to meet individuals where they're at. So depending on their schedule, depending on their background or training history, if they've done sports before or activities, really trying to see what is actually going to be sustainable for this individual. Because if I tell somebody that has literally no background in any type of training or activity, hey, let's train 5 days a week, maybe they'll do it for a week, maybe not. It's not going to work for them. However, if you have somebody that has more of a background, say they've done a marathon before or have done some hiking or some strength training, but their schedule is super busy, say they're a doctor or somebody that works 50 plus hours a week, again, 5 days a week might not be sustainable. Hey, let's try to do 3. And so really meeting somebody where they're at, and there isn't anything good or bad about training 2 days a week, or there isn't anything good or bad about training 5+ days a week, as long as that's sustainable for you and healthy for your body, of course. And really then balancing out strength and endurance depending on your overall goals.
Got it. And then going back to fueling when you actually are out on a hike, like, I'm terrible about this. Like, I was training for a Boston Marathon qualifying time one time, and I just blew off all my eating, and I blew up at 20 miles when I easily would have qualified, but I cramped up. I've done triathlons where I haven't eaten and fueled. I've done long cycling training, the century rides and stuff like that, where I haven't fueled and I've cramped up. Can you talk a little bit about, how do you mentally get people to accept that they need to focus on fueling when they're out there?
I mean, I think kind of what you just said, part of it is experience and experiencing the negatives of not fueling properly. And so that's one example if somebody has had that experience. If somebody has not had that experience, trying to just educate as much as possible in a very simple manner, because nutrition can become very overwhelming for individuals, especially if they don't have any type of background in it. And I would say some of kind of the easier fueling tips that I could provide somebody with, especially for these longer days, whether they be hiking or running, would be really focusing on getting a mix of the macronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, especially for longer term endurance events or activities, and also minimizing fiber intake, because that can create a lot of gastrointestinal distress, possibly nausea, cramping, not ideal. And really focusing on also using smaller days to trial what your body can tolerate the best. And that way, if you do go out on a longer day, you're not bonking, cramping, getting nausea, getting gastrointestinal distress, because you hopefully have figured out on smaller days what actually works for your body, because everybody is going to be different.
Yeah. And Sarah, like, I don't want to, me and Stomp have some personal issues, but like, I will say, like, when I noticed we went hiking a week or two ago, like, he never stops. Like, I wanted to stop and eat, but he wouldn't stop going. And I felt like intimidated to be like, hey, Stomp, I need to fuel up. He was like all business. And I was like, and I was with Jimmy Chaga and Stomp, and I just felt like I was embarrassed to like say like, hey, I need to stop and eat something, because Stomp is just on the move all the time. So how do you deal with those group dynamics where you got to put your hiking partners in check?
I mean, I just tell them usually. No, I'm just kidding. It depends.
He's intimidating. Look at him.
It totally depends. I would say
The Stomp machine.
I would say it's easier in a one-on-one dynamic or like a smaller group setting where you're able to, where you know those humans more and you're able to say, hey, I need to actually do this for myself, because honestly, fueling our body is legit safety on trail, because especially in the colder season where there's way less room for error, but also it can become a huge factor in the summer as well with that heat and humidity if we're not feeding and fueling and hydrating appropriately. And so being able to know that and speak up for yourself. And if you're somebody that can eat while moving, that's great. Maybe there's certain foods that you can eat easier while moving, or perhaps packing snacks that are higher in calories so that if you don't want to take a long break, whether it be you're intimidated by your hiking partner or it's really cold and you just cannot take that long of a break, being able to get in more calories with fewer bites, less chewing is definitely possibly convenient.
Yeah, this guy never stops moving. I'm like, Stomp, can we take a break? Like, what's going on here?
Like, let's chill.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it's because I was partially wet. So I wanted to keep on moving because my underlayer, my mid layer was a little damp. I'm like, let's keep motoring, guys. Let's go.
Guys, all business.
No views, all business.
All right, so Sarah, so we've got you as a captive audience, and we're both super cheap, so we don't want to pay for your services right away, but maybe we will in the future. But I thought that this would be fun if you could we'll give you a couple of use cases and you just sort of give us advice. So Stomp wants to get back into running. He talked about this. So he wants to train for the Mount Washington road race. So Stomp's background, I'll talk for him because he doesn't need to talk. He's got a hip replacement. He's a hiking machine, but he's been out of running for a while. He's not afraid of strength training because he's a boxer. And what else am I missing, Stomp?
Super handsome.
Yeah. Okay, super handsome. But how are we going to get Stomp back into like fighting mode for the Mount Washington road race?
Yeah, I would say, especially for hip issues, let's focus
He's
on some strengthening. Okay, we're going to get into all of it. Let me know if I miss anything.
Yeah, I already did.
And so for hip issues, I actually have hip dysplasia, so I can speak strongly to this one. And
that was my problem.
Right? Everybody's always like, don't dogs have that? Yes, they do. So do humans.
Well, may I ask, I mean, it's not appropriate in most situations, but what's your age?
I almost want to make you guess.
I'll ask it anyway.
Stomp. No, time out. Whoa. You can't. I'm in human resources. You cannot ask that question. No.
Okay. Well, here's the deal.
I'll give you permission, but you have to guess first.
No, dude, that's just
all right, I'll guess.
recipe
I won't even guess, but I discovered mine when I was 45 and it was too late.
Yeah.
So hip dysplasia is a monster. It can devastate your hips.
It's rough. Yeah. They suspected it when I was an infant, but the testing wasn't as thorough then. And then I ended up stress fracturing my sacrum when I was, I think, in 8th grade, which is very hard to do. But combination of an eating disorder during developmental years and then hip dysplasia just creates a lovely time. But yeah, hip dysplasia is tough.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's not a joke. I mean, you're lucky that you caught it early. I mean, to catch it in your 40s is like, that's a bummer. But anyway, back to the case study.
Yeah. But in terms of your scenario, let's get to this. Yes. So Hip strengthening is definitely going to be super important, and all of the muscles that support the hips. So really quads, hamstrings, glutes, also core muscles. Everybody thinks of core as, do you have a six pack? No, there's actually really deep core muscles, and also having a really strong pelvic floor as well. So focusing on strengthening all of those areas in multiple planes of motion and in multiple movement patterns. So I'm always talking with folks on movement patterns being pushing, pulling, squatting, hinging, and carrying. And I think that really looking at movement in this kind of larger perspective can be helpful. It's not just doing push-ups, just doing squats. It's not just doing like glute bridges, for example, to focus on like hip and glute strength, but doing all of these different things to really strengthen your body as a whole. And so I promote that for everybody in general, especially individuals with hip issues that have goals around hiking and running. And then I would say in terms of like, weight loss, I am definitely not somebody that really coaches on weight loss. It's just not my scope of practice. But I always would promote just really focusing on the way that you're fueling your body in general, day to day and around activity, and trying to make choices that are going to really work with your body long term and help you feel your best both day to day and during activity, and recover from activity so that you're able to keep getting out there and feel good just on a whole. And also the way that you're performing is definitely super important.
All right, Stomp. So
Mike's turn.
Yeah, well, let's keep on going on you. But anyway, so for me, I feel like, Sarah, I represent like a very common scenario that I think our listeners, like, I've sort of gone through my life feeling like if I run 20 to 30 miles a week, or I, run or hike 20, 30 miles a week, I can basically do whatever the hell I want when it comes to eating because I put in my work and now I can eat whatever the hell I want. So I have a bunch of bad habits. So first of all, I tend to skip breakfast during the week when I'm working. And then I'll have a pretty standard lunch, and then I pig out during dinner. And then I'll also, like 8 o'clock comes around and I'm eating my pretzels in bed before I go to bed. And then, I'll get up in the morning and run again. I'm working on the strength training, but can you talk a little bit about sort of the cadence of how you should be eating across the day? Because I feel like I've read that, breakfast is super important, and that sort of limiting the window when you eat and not eating like right before dinner, especially spiking like your glucose levels and things like that with a lot of carbs at night. But can you talk a little bit about like how can I get my act together and get rid of these bad habits?
So yeah, nutrition is super nuanced, and there are so many articles and sources out there which are complete BS in my humble opinion. And that also makes it really confusing for folks because they don't know what to believe, what not to believe, what to turn to, what to follow, etc. And so with nutrition, like I said, it's super nuanced. Everybody is going to be different. Some individuals that I work with, they are four meals a day and that does it for them. Some are 3 meals and 3 snacks. The list goes on and on. The main things that I would want to focus on is, again, getting in enough food daily so that you're not feeling any symptoms of undereating, which could be headache, nausea, fatigue, low blood sugar, etc. Also, getting in enough food, calories, energy during and around training to be able to support your body to do the thing that you want to do, both before and during, and then recover from it after so that we can keep doing it. And in terms of things such as, like you said, eating before dinner or like eating before bed and kind of snacking, stuff like that, I would say if you're hungry and your body's telling you something. And that is something that I think society puts a lot of messaging around, which just isn't healthy, and we can get really hard on ourselves for it. But again, taking a step back and being able to ask yourself, like, am I actually hungry? Am I stressed? Because sometimes stress can really, want us to snack on foods. I'll sometimes on a super stressed day be like just munching on tortilla chips because it's crunchy, and that is totally a thing. But I also think that if that's what you need in that moment, that's not a bad thing. It's just being able to recognize it and say, hey, I'm doing this because of this. Great. I'm making note of this. How can I maybe then approach my stress in other healthier or like more different ways, if you will? Because honestly, that eating tortilla chips isn't inherently unhealthy. It just maybe there's a different way as well. But yeah, so really looking at day to day overall, getting in enough food, getting in a variety of macronutrients, which again are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, which all have different uses and importance for the body. And then micronutrients, vitamins, and minerals to be able to support our body, because we do have these needs for those. And also not stressing a ton or feeling bad about the way that we're like feeding ourselves.
Got it. So what I'm hearing is that a lot of the assumptions that we hear, and a lot of these things are like, I'll pick it up listening to a different podcast, or I'll pick it up listening to or reading different magazine articles or whatever. And I think what I'm hearing from you is that there's no one size fits all. Sometimes if you're hungry, you just got to eat, and don't beat yourself up too badly. I mean, at the end of the day, I am still doing like 20, 30 miles a week, which is that's not nothing, right?
Yeah, and I think, my perspective from a coaching standpoint is definitely influenced by my like almost 10-year battle with anorexia, and that is definitely something. But also, I try to not take that for granted, because I think that really allows me to have a very, I don't love the word healthy, but I'm going to use it, healthy relationship with the clients that I work with, because I can really take a step back and see them as a human and see that they're struggling with certain things, see that they're confused, see that they're being, influenced by diet culture, fitness culture, and society. And so I do love that I have that experience to be able to take from and then add that to my actual educational background. But yeah, being less hard on ourselves is definitely a number one. And I think that it's just something that's a really, again, nuanced thing, nutrition as a whole. And it is a very, again, long game approach to figuring out what actually works for us. Yeah. Oh, and then one thing you had mentioned about like doing like longer days. I think that some folks can have the mentality of, oh, well, I'm just doing these long days so I can just eat whatever. Or also, I am doing these long days and I'll just have like a snack here and there throughout it, but then like I'll just like go pig out after, or I'll just like go eat multiple burgers and have beers. That might not be the best approach for your overall like performance and recovery and like feeling good throughout the activity.
Got it. Yeah. And a lot of times, like, I'll catch myself if I'm doing like a 10 or 12 mile hike. I'll be like, all right, well, and I did good in the beginning, and I ate, I had a meal before I got on the trail, and I ate lunch or whatever, but I got 4 or 5 miles left, and I'd probably be better off having, stopping for 10, 15 minutes, having that, refueling, and then, but a lot of times, like, I'll catch myself and be like, I'll just bang out the next 4 miles and I'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's easy as you get into those later miles to think, oh, well, I'm almost done, I'm going downhill. I think as a general practice, especially on longer days, I really do encourage folks to aim for getting in like 150 to 300 calories. That's an average. It could be more, especially on really long pushes or pushes with high effort, calories per hour. And so I'll generally try to eat something every hour or every 3 miles. That's kind of my general rule of thumb for myself and a lot of my clients.
Got it. All right. And we got to normalize like stopping on the way out on Lincoln Woods Stomp and having like our final snack before we get to the car.
He's like, I'm not a fan of Sarah right now.
The final leg. No, my approach is to absolutely avoid carbs throughout the entire day, because it just crashes. I crash. So it's just the insulin effect. So I will limit it to just like the nuts, tuna, protein, that type of thing to go. But at the very end of the day, I'm not really thinking much about anything that I'm eating. I'm thinking about more or less hydrating or rehydrating at the very end of the day. But during the day, I have a really complicated history with food. I have a lot of food allergies myself, Sarah, and I'm 53, and I've just sort of dialed it in as to what works for me now. And I had a lot of success with the whole intermittent thing, just like spacing it out, having a light to moderate meal towards the end of the day, and it changed my life. It's like, it worked for me. So very interesting, complicated. I don't think it's worth getting into now, but speaking about nuance, that led me into a question I had for you. What's your take on the whole national food pyramid? Because I look at that and I go, oh my God, if diet has to be nuanced, how the heck can people apply this pyramid that they got going on right now? It's totally upside down, it seems.
Nobody come at me that's a registered dietitian, but this is one of the reasons I didn't become a registered dietitian or go through like a dietetics program. I actually started a master's of science in nutrition, which, side note, I'm glad I didn't continue because it would have been during COVID and it just wasn't the right program. Anyways, I think that it depends, which is just my large answer because, again, I don't know all of everybody listening. I don't know you personally, Stomp, and everything that's going on for you. But I think that really, again, focusing on different macronutrients and seeing what works for you over time and not really looking at, okay, this is like the general recommendation. However, also most science is based on men, not women. So that's like another side note just to add in is that if you're a female, depending on, if you're in menopause, not in menopause, what's going on for you, a lot of research is done on men, and that is something to take into consideration. And so, again, really trying to figure out what is actually going to work for your body, whether this is writing down a food log day to day, writing down how you're feeling, if you're trying to get different performance goals, how those are being reached, how you're recovering, and really just taking note of what's going on for you is, I think, more insightful than things such as the food pyramid or My Plate, which it now is.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's what it took for me is essentially to do that was complicated if you were eating all these foods all day long. Keeping a food log just did not work. So I took it to the limiting phase. I just stripped it all down to nothing and then worked up from there. And I found a balance that worked. Because otherwise it's so confounding when you're eating all these different kinds of foods. Like, what is causing my trouble? It's very difficult.
Absolutely. It's so hard to figure out because, depending on what's going on for you, it could be gluten, it could be dairy, it could be soy, it could be FODMAPs. You could have something health-wise underlying, such as like autoimmunity, which is huge in this country and worldwide. There's so many different factors to try to figure out what actually is going on, and then just add in like the confusion of all of these nutritional resources that are out there.
And I think at the end of the day, like, you have to have a realistic perspective. Like, you're never going to be, this is never anything that you like, okay, I'm finished and I'm completely dialed in. Ultimately what you want is to be able to lead a lifestyle that you can achieve your physical pursuits in a way where, you feel like, okay, I have the energy and the stamina to complete these, especially when it comes to hiking. And at the end of the day, like, if you fluctuate a little bit on your weight, or if you're not reaching all the goals you want from a strength perspective or a cardio perspective, as long as you can get through your goals, I think it's okay, even if you struggle a little bit. So it's never something that you can be like, all right, I'm done. It's just a continuous focus on staying and maintaining where you are.
Yeah, it's like this continual evolution, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. But so Sarah, can you want to plug your podcast, plug your services, anything you want to, we'll include all the details in the show notes, but do you want to just sort of, give a little commercial for yourself here?
In terms of services, I work one-on-one with individuals out of Core Community Fitness, which is in Center Conway, New Hampshire, personal training. And then I work virtually with individuals, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, around strength training and sports nutrition, mainly for like mountain endurance athletes and enthusiasts, through my Fed and Fueled, which is sports nutrition coaching, and Functional Foundation, which is strength coaching. Those are just membership models. You can find them on my website. And then I also have the podcast, the Pursuing EndurancePodcast, which again, we talk all about strength training and sports nutrition, entrepreneurship, and eating disorder recovery.
Got it. And your podcast, do you have guests on there, or is it just you talking on your podcast?
It's just me for now. I am hoping to start having guests maybe by like the end of Q2, so maybe by like June of 2023.
Got it. How is it just showing up on a podcast and being, you don't have to like worry about the script or anything like that. You just have to answer questions. Is it nice?
It's nice. I definitely, depending on the episode, I do some research ahead of time. So like episode 3, which anybody listening might actually be interested in, which is all about the current scientific literature around different nutritional recommendations. That one I had notes for because I knew that I was going to give the wrong amount of grams per kilogram of protein, for example. But it's definitely, it was weird at first, just sitting with my microphone, watching myself, like the audio record on my computer. Definitely more used to it now. So being interviewed is definitely a whole different ball game, but I'm having fun. Thanks.
Doing great.
Awesome. Yeah. I want to do one of these days. I want to go on a podcast where I just have to show up. I don't have to worry about like the script or scheduling or any of that stuff.
Maybe I'll have you on mine.
Have I got a podcast for you?
Oh, you do?
Yeah. That or Fantasy Pants, bro.
Oh, I could do that. We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Talk about winging it.
But Sarah, I was going to go through your gear list that's on your website, but I think what I'll do is I'll just include the link. You know, we've talked about sort of winter gear, and I'm always concerned that, like me and Stomp, obviously, like we have male specific stuff around like clothing and stuff like that. So you have some really good detail on the gear list that you use for 3-season and winter and running. So I'll include that as a link in the show notes so that if anybody wants to check it out, I feel like your gear seems pretty dialed in. You got a lot of like crossover from what I use as well.
Yeah, no, I try to provide like, you know, again, on there, I think I have all the different options because of course, depending on the temperature, I'm going to wear like different leggings, for example, but I kind of provided all of the options that I might pick from on there.
Yeah. So awesome. So stick around. We're going to do a little segment here about, I pulled some tidbits on White Mountain history, and then we're going to do some search and rescue news as well. So, but Stomp, before we move on to the next subject, anything that I missed with Sarah that you wanted to cover?
No, I appreciate the input. It's great. A lot of it's familiar with me. It's like I have a dusty exercise physiology degree, and I love athletic trainers. I think you guys are the greatest, and you know your stuff, Sarah. So keep on keeping on. It's good stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Let's dive into some White Mountains history, shall we?
Whenever I drive around, I always sort of keep an eye out for the green historical marker signs. So I was over in Benton and Wentworth in that area for the for the hike on Moosilauke. So I pulled a couple of tidbits for history, and I can get into those. So I have 3 of them. But Stomp, I didn't know. Do we have more sponsors we want to pull on this one?
Sweet Beginnings Daycare is a New Hampshire state licensed childcare provider that offers care for children from 6 weeks to 12 years with flexibility in before and after school care as well. Sweet Beginnings aims to instill a love for learning by providing a safe and positive experience within a loving and warm environment. Sweet Beginnings believes this is a good foundation to teach children in order to prepare them for their future. For more information, contact Sweet Beginnings at 603-568-4530. Visit them at Sweet Beginnings Daycare on Facebook or email Shandy at Shandy Elliott. That's ShandiElliott at outlook.com. And Shandy would love to watch your kids while you go hiking. I added that, Mike.
You added that? Okay. So my kids are
yeah, sorry, Shandy.
My kids won't let me. Well, 2 of them would gladly let me go hiking. My oldest one, she would not let me drop her off. I'd have to take her.
Too funny.
Cool. All right. Well, let Shandy take care of your kids while you go hiking. Anything else? Any other sponsors?
No, we're good.
All right. So first one, Stomp. I've been thinking a lot about this. Do you see this kid with the? He's got the big hair, and he's a crypto guy, and apparently he's living in the Bahamas with his girlfriend, and they're all living together, and there's all kinds of stuff going on, and apparently he's connected. He's a billionaire. He's got billions of dollars, and somehow, I don't understand how this stuff works, but he basically just like, for whatever reason, he had $1 billion. Now he has no money, and he's like, I don't have any more money. So with this cryptocurrency stuff, so the thing, this whole story, I've been paying attention to it, and I was thinking about in New Hampshire before cryptocurrency, there was, each country had their own sort of monetary policies, and there was no sort of international process. So the first version of cryptocurrency was actually established in New Hampshire after World War II in this place called the Bretton Woods Conference. So after World War II, in New Hampshire, there was this conference where 44 nations came with their diplomats, and they met at Bretton Woods, and they did a conference for 30 days. And in that conference, basically what they did is they established how these countries were going to interact with each other when it came to monetary funds. And they all agreed that they were going to peg their currencies against the value of gold for consistency's sake. And they built out like this International Monetary Fund. They built out the World Bank. They established the gold standard, and it allowed for countries to expand their sort of ability to trade with each other and set monetary policy so that it was a lot more predictable. And you didn't have things like the Great Depression where the value of currencies and inflation and things like that took off too significantly. So this all happened at Bretton Woods. So now it's where you go skiing and you do your snowmobiling, but back then there was a conference center where you had all the world's most important thinkers got together to establish our economic policies that basically took us from World War II up until the last few years. And now like this cryptocurrency stuff seems to be like the next version of that. But I thought it was pretty cool that happened in New Hampshire.
Yeah. The world's most important stinkers at this point. It's like, I literally didn't know that. Bretton Woods, that's pretty amazing. I never connected it. I thought it was somewhere else. But a lot of good it's doing right now. It's like, geez.
Yeah, matter of fact, the probably the most significant person that was at that conference is a guy named John Maynard Keynes. And he was, I may have that name wrong, but I think I've got it right.
Keynesian. It's Keynesian.
Keynesian, yeah. So he basically established Keynesian economics, which is essentially using deficit spending to create jobs and to make sure that your unemployment rate is sort of low enough where your economy can grow consistently over time, which I think worked pretty well for a while. But once governments figured out that they can sort of spend at a deficit, some governments were less disciplined about it than others. So he's a controversial guy, and I think he went out of like favor for a number of years. But he was essentially like the main person that established a lot of the infrastructure that the world now sort of runs off of. And a lot of times, like the Bretton Woods Conference, like people that are conspiracy theory types will point back to the Bretton Woods Conference and say that like that was like the first beginning of like the one world order and all this crazy stuff, which who knows? I don't know. I don't know if there's conspiracy stuff going on, but it's an interesting fact that this all happened at Bretton Woods, which makes me think, why doesn't Bretton Woods ever do any other interesting like world conferences? I never hear of anything from them ever since this.
Well, I think that's pretty much just history now. I think it's all World Economic Forum now and Davos and everything else. I mean, you're seeing the same critters just under different names. And I do study a lot of this stuff. And I mean, the Keynesian stuff is crazy. I mean, we're seeing sort of the results of that now, in my opinion. I mean, you're seeing a country talking about us in particular with trillions of dollars of debt, printing money, causes inflation. I mean, it's a lot of these principles that are in action right now are coming home to roost. So yeah, we're in a deep hole right now. So long conversation, complicated. I don't know enough about it. I know the tip of the iceberg, but we're in a hole for sure. So hopefully something's going to change.
Yeah, it's just sort of interesting that like New Hampshire sort of had their mark on like one of the most important sort of meetings of the 20th century was of that time. But anyway.
No, that's super cool. It's just, this is why I lose sleep, dude. This is like we are in rough shape right now.
Don't get too stressed out. But I'm going to continue on the politics stuff so you can get even more stressed out. So the next one here is there's an historical there's a historical marker in Claremont, which is it commemorates the historical handshake. So it's a green sign, and it's an event that happened on June 11th, 1995. President Clinton and Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich met at the invitation of the Congress of Claremont Senior Citizens. And this must have been, I'm assuming this might have been around the time that Clinton was going to start running for re-election, and they were debating issues affecting senior citizens. So during the debate, the two political foes shook hands and pledged to create a bipartisan commission to study federal limits on lobbying and financing of election campaigns. So the famous handshake on campaign finance reform was carried live on television, and it received widespread media coverage, including front page attention in the newspapers nationwide. So this was like back in the 90s, you still sort of had these interactions between the both sides of the political aisle around agreeing to work on things together. Like that's sort of unheard of now, but back then, it is interesting to think that like they were still focusing on limiting the ability for people to sort of donate money to election campaigns to influence their special interest, and then they also wanted to put limits on lobbying, which I think if you can look back from 1995 until now, you could think that their approach to making sure that they limit these two areas was a colossal failure. But it's interesting to sort of go back to a simpler time where at least you could get these people talking and they would agree to start looking at solving problems together, but can't even get that now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep, totally agreed.
Yeah, but I thought that was pretty cool that happened in Claremont. And then the last little bit of historical tidbits that I have, actually I have two more. One is in Benton, New Hampshire, and there's a historical marker on there that commemorates the Pike Tract, which was the beginning of the White Mountain National Forest. So when I was hiking up Glen Cliff with my friend Sean, I was explaining to him that Moosilauke is significant, especially when it comes to AT through hikers, because it's sort of like their entrance to the White Mountains. So they hit that sort of tablelands, and then you get up to the peak, and then you can see out to Franconia Ridge and the Presidentials, and out to Maine and everything that's ahead of you. And it's sort of the gateway to the White Mountains. So the Pike Tract was a purchase of 7,000 acres of timber-covered mountain slopes that was abandoned by or abandoned farmland. It was a purchase from Bertram Pike in 1914. So it was the first acquisition towards the establishment of the White Mountain National Forest. So I thought that's significant that it was that tract of land near Moosilauke that is sort of the beginning of the White Mountain National Forest, and that's still the gateway for the AT through hikers into the White Mountains on that side. So
yeah, it's a nice area of the state. It's pretty.
Yeah. And then the last one I have is there is a historical marker in Warren, New Hampshire. So when you're driving back from Glen Cliff, I spotted it, and it commemorates Sarah Witcher and the bear. So apparently this is a story of a 3-year-old girl that wandered off. She got lost, and the whole town was out looking for her. And apparently there was one guy that had said he had a dream that he was going to find Sarah on some like river or stream or something like that, and that she was being looked over by a bear. And then sure enough, they found Sarah there, and she said that she had been sort of with these like furry creatures, and they assumed that she had been taken care of by some black bears. So
that's great.
And who knows if that's true. There's some books about it, so you can buy Sarah Witcher and the Bear stories. The cool thing I thought of, I picked up on this one, is that this is one of the newest historical markers, and the reason that this was put in place is that it was at the request of a local elementary school. So the teacher and the students put together a proposal to get the historical marker put up, which I thought was pretty cool. So thumbs up for that teacher.
Yeah, I wonder what the process is for that. It's interesting. Oh, like if there's like a certain time frame that has to elapse before you can qualify to submit, or
I don't know. It's interesting. I was poking through some of the Wikipedia listings as well, and it's interesting. Like they'll have a number of the historical markers that went up over the years that sort of commemorated battles between Confederate soldiers soldiers of the colonial soldiers and Native Americans have either been retired or they've been sort of rewritten, I think, to have much more of a sort of a neutral history around it. So I don't know how the editing of those is done or how you propose new ones.
Yeah, well, I'll do some research. That'll be my homework while you're on vacation.
Yeah. Well, what I would say, though, is interesting is that there's not a lot of there's a couple of them. You've got like the Crawford House and you've got the Cherry Mountain Slide, but there's not a lot that commemorate any sort of significant historical activities around hiking. Like I think you got Darby Field, but I wonder, like, it would be cool if you could find like who was the first person to do 4,000 footers, where did they finish on, stuff like that. But I don't know, maybe somebody listening knows more than I do about how to get these historical markers put up.
Yeah, there's plenty around like Mount Washington and the Prezzies, but I'm not sure outside of that range.
What'd you guys think? You like the history? Did you learn anything new?
Yeah, I just got triggered, man. Appreciate it.
Calm down, Stomp. What do you think, Sarah? Did you learn anything new or do you know all this stuff?
I don't know all of it, but it was definitely interesting.
All right. Very good. So,
yeah, we're the first in the nation to vote, apparently. Not that that matters much.
Yeah. I heard that I saw something about Governor Sununu was like trying to defend that. I think that they're always trying to take that away from New Hampshire.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Oh, I can tell you one other thing, another historical thing, political. The Omni Hotel. Mr. and Mrs. Stomp had a couples massage in the same place that the Clintons had a massage. Does that count for historical content?
This is a PG podcast, Stomp. I got a couple of stories here. One is portable defibrillator automatic CPR machine helps save a hiker in cardiac arrest. So this was a gentleman that was hiking Mount Bierstadt as his first Colorado 14,000 footer. And he drove up there, had a successful ascent, and he was coming down gradually and he was feeling exhausted and he didn't feel very well. So he sent some hikers down ahead of him to call for help. This gentleman was a physician, so he knew the symptoms of a heart attack. He felt the chest pain, the numbness in his left arm. He got down and rested on the ground. I guess he got down to the parking lot. 911 call went out to EMS, and when they got there, they were able to, I guess actually maybe he didn't make it down. They decided to call for a helicopter. And when they got to him, they apparently were able to identify that he was in bad shape, but they were able to, I guess, get to him with an automatic CPR machine. I guess it looks like a plunger that goes up and down on someone's chest, and he was in the middle of a heart attack, and I guess they were able to use this machine to save his life, which is pretty cool.
I've never seen that machine before, but it looks pretty amazing. I mean, in the case of a lot of these cardiac events in the mountains, you typically have families or passerbys, Good Samaritans, voluntarily start to do CPR on an individual that may be having a cardiac event, and they may be at it for upwards of an hour. I mean, it's heartbreaking and it's heroic all at the same time. But this machine is very interesting. I'd like to do some more research on it and see how effective it is and how practical it is. I mean, it looks pretty big. Like, I can't imagine a a responder hiking up trail with this thing on the pack, but if this is stored in, say, a Black Hawk or a Dart helicopter, maybe there's some value there. It's very interesting. I've never
it looks
seen
like
it.
It sort of wraps around your waist. I would assume too there's probably a limit to the size of the person that this can be used on.
That's another issue.
But it looks like it sort of wraps around your body, and then there's like a plunger thing that comes down, and I'm assuming that just sort of automatically, does the plunging mechanism around your heart instead of having to do CPR.
Yeah, amazing. Clever.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to our next story here, we've got a hiker's video that captures a terrifying moment that a base jumper slams into a canyon wall and then ends up dangling from a cliff. So this was in Utah. A family witnessed this frightening scene when a base jumper. So base jumpers are these people that jump off of like radio towers, cliffs. I don't know. I can't remember what base stand. They'll jump off of like bridges. I think it's bridges. I don't know what base stands for, but I forget.
Let me take a stab at it.
Bridges?
I'm rusty with it too. So bridges, air, jumping out of planes.
No, I think it's bridges, antennas.
No? Span. Oh, you're right. Yeah. So, bridges. Oh, man, we got to look this up quick.
Right,
Hold
you
on.
do that, and I'm going to go through the story here. So, Mitch Edwards and his 12-year-old son, Barron, captured the stomach-churning drama on their cell phones as it unfolded amidst the 700-foot Red Rock Canyons while they were hiking in Moab. So this base jumper slammed into that thing hard and then started to fall straight down. He was probably 200 or 300 feet above the ground when he first hit the cliff, and then he got to about 100 feet before hitting a ledge, and then his parachute, I guess, snagged on a ledge, and then he was just sort of hanging on from there. He was lucky. If the parachute hadn't caught on the rock, it probably would have led to his demise. So the father and son were kind of watching in horror, and then there were two other base jumpers that I guess sprinted to the bottom of the cliff, and they started to work their way up to try to figure out how do they save this guy.
So we were close. I got SPANS, but it's basically an acronym for 4 categories of fixed objects from which one can jump, being buildings, antennae, or radio masts, spans, bridges, and earth, or cliffs. Very cool, very cool.
Very good. Well, anyway, this guy was dangling, and eventually they were able to get some operation going to retrieve him, and then eventually he was airlifted to a nearby hospital. So the thing about base jumping is you got to avoid the canyon wall when you jump off. You got to jump out and not in.
Yes. Yes, correct.
And then this next story. So we've talked about this before. Matter of fact, I've seen this on my phone, Stomp. So Apple has this new SOS. So just so everybody knows, Stomp is one of those green text message people. So you don't have an iPhone, right?
No, it's an Android.
Yeah. So I don't even know if you know this, but Apple people, when you're texting with me and you have the green bubble on your text, like we judge you. And we're basically like, you don't have an Apple phone. We're like, that he's a green texter.
I get it.
Anyway, so that's why I said you're a green texter. But anyway, Apple phones, when you upgrade to the latest OS, and I'm assuming there's like a level of phone too that you need to have, it goes into SOS mode when you're not connected to a cell tower. And I think that you can basically just send out an emergency text message and it picks it up via satellite. So that is now active, and it sounds like in this case an Alaskan snowmobiler was rescued using this emergency functionality. So this is an OS 16.1, and it's designed for iPhone 14 owners. I don't think I have a 14, but it still gives me the SOS option on my phone. But anyway, this new technology is coming out, and this guy was in trouble and was able to use the feature in Alaska, and he was stranded in a rural area. This was around December 1st. State troopers received the alert that he was traveling by snow machine and had become stranded, and they were able to rescue him successfully with no injuries. very remote area on the fringes of where satellite connectivity is even available. So I guess Apple said that the satellite connectivity might not work in places above 62 degrees in latitude, such as northern parts of Canada, Alaska, in that area, but he was just close enough to be able to be reached. But I think for us, we'd be okay. But eventually, these phones are all going to have a connectivity to satellite, whether it's going to be Starlink from Elon Musk or some other satellite provider. I'm assuming that the hierarchy will be Wi-Fi, cell connection, and then if you don't have cell connection, you'll have connectivity to satellite eventually. So my guess is that your cell phone will always be available for satellite, if probably 5 years from now.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm looking it up now, and there are several ways that this thing can be triggered. I believe if there's like a quick jolt in velocity or elevation, it can go. There's also just your default route, which is pressing a couple buttons on your phone. It gets triggered, but apparently, initially when they rolled this out, a lot of people were just getting triggered just unintentionally. So it's very interesting. I'm sure they've sort of worked out those bugs by now, I would hope.
Yeah, so we'll see. But more to come on the satellite capability in the future. I'm sure that'll be a continuous topic for us. Next story is in California. An extreme storm traps hikers and their rescuers in California Canyon for 3 days. So this was a backpacking trip into the California wilderness, and it turned into a harrowing 3 days for two hikers after an extreme storm swept through their area. So these two hikers were one from Colorado and then one from Los Angeles. They went on a multi-day adventure in the San Gorgonio Wilderness in Riverside County, and they got hit by a heavy storm. There was flooding in LA and dumping snow in the mountains, so they got hit with the snow in the mountains, and eventually they got disoriented and had to leave the trail. They got stuck in the steep canyon, and I guess as they were climbing down, one of them injured their foot. They had to stop. They did have all their backpacking gear, so they were able to pitch a tent, and then they had a personal locator beacon which sent an emergency signal that was received by the Sheriff's Department on November 7th. They activated a search and rescue team to find the couple. There was bad weather, and there was heavy rain and a lot of freezing and treacherous terrain, so the rescue team wasn't able to reach the victims until later that night. And then two other teams and a helicopter attempted but failed to reach the victims due to the storm. So they had no options, so the rescue team basically just decided to shelter with them.
Yes.
The next morning, so they were there for 2 days, the storm subsided and the helicopters were sent back in. They still couldn't get them because of the cloud cover, and eventually they had to call like 25 additional alpine rescue personnel in from the region. Finally, the next day, 5 days after these hikers had gone on the mission and 3 days after the storm trapped them, the rescue helicopters were able to get to them, so they picked them all off the mountain. So no serious injuries, but kind of a crazy story, huh?
Yeah, it really is. It's unusual. You just don't hear about that too often, but it made sense. I mean, the risk to the rescuers trying to get out, yeah, that could have been a second rescue.
I would think the rescuers probably, them showing up, it probably got the victims sort of in a better place mentally, knowing that, okay, we're not alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. And Stomp, I don't know if you want to do these next two. There's one in Utah, and then there is another in the Adirondacks.
Do you want to just go to local?
Why don't we do the Adirondacks one, and then we'll cover the Utah one afterwards, and we'll go to local. So in the Adirondacks, there was a 19-year-old hiker that had gone out hiking with a friend of his. They had kind of an aggressive plan to summit, I think, the Algonquin Peak. So they were going to climb Wright, Algonquin, Boundary, and Iroquois. 19-year-old with his friend, so two 19-year-olds. They, I guess, had some spikes for their boots, but not suggested micro spikes for icy conditions. They weren't wearing the best clothes, and I guess they started off by summiting Mount Wright and then returned to the junction to discuss the rest of their plans. They started up Algonquin. One of the friends was faster than the other one, so he went up ahead. The other friend decided he was going to bail out. They had some connectivity with their cell phones, so they were texting each other. The 19-year-old that had continued on summited around 4:30, and as he was getting down, obviously it gets dark, he became lost. He texted his father asking for a picture of the map to help find the closest road or trail nearby where he was, which was Lake Colden. But by that point, his spikes had broken. He was having trouble continuing on the ice. So the father called 911, got a rescue going. Eventually, they found this kid, and he was hypothermic. I think they found him at like 4 a.m. He was hypothermic, and they, the lesson they said was like, look, start earlier in the day, wear proper clothing, and have a better sense of what the weather forecast is going to be like in order to prevent this incident. So they were able to basically take this kid. He was in and out of sleep and consciousness, but they were able to wake him up on a couple of phone calls. But
unbelievable. I mean, that's like moderate, hypothermia. This kid's really lucky.
Yeah, really scary.
Yeah, it's a crazy story. I mean, deep snow, unbelievable.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Not to have the map, to call for a picture of the map. I mean, so many mistakes, but thank God they made it out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, separating from your friend.
Separating, yeah, groups. We don't talk about that enough, Mike. Group separation. There was like a year, I think the first or, a year into our effort here, we talked a lot about group separations, especially on Chicora, but we haven't heard about that recently, knock on wood. But that's an important one. Always stay together. The slowest pace rules the day. Never leave somebody behind.
Exactly. I mean, you get into so many of these predicaments because if you get separated and you're at a trail split and you assume they're going one way and they go another, you can put even if you're ahead and you're the fast one, like you can put your friends' lives at risk by going too fast, just as much as you can do it by going too slow.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So this next one is, this keeps coming up. Like, I think we've had about 5 of these this year. So this is a hiker in distress on Champney Falls Trail. And again, I'm not saying like this keeps coming up from the perspective that anybody's doing anything wrong. I just think people just need to be aware. If you're hiking in the Whites, especially in that whole section of trails on the Kangamangas where you've got Champney Falls, you've got Hedgehog, you've got the UNH Trail, all that entire area there's no cell connection. And there's no cell connection until you get up high, but if you're coming down from like Champney Falls, like you're in a situation where you've got to make the decision to either, get somebody to hike out and then they got to drive all the way down to the bottom of the Kank in order to get cell connection, or you just got to gut it out. So luckily this person had a beacon. So it was a 54-year-old gentleman from Massachusetts that was on the Champney Falls Trail, and he was able to activate a beacon. He was coming down from the summit when he began suffering chest pains. They were about 2.5 miles from the trailhead when the beacon was activated, and there's no cell phone connection in the area, so they couldn't establish direct communication. But conservation officers and the Forest Service and Lakes Region SAR responded, and apparently this gentleman was able to hike under his own power and get pretty close to the trailhead. So he had activated the beacon around 12:30. They got to him around 2 p.m. and then he was evaluated at the scene, and Conway ambulance personnel transported him to Memorial Hospital. But I think if you're going to be going into that area, just be aware, like you either have to have a beacon with you, or you just have to understand the cell phone connectivity in Champney Falls is just non-existent.
Zero. Yep. And to finish off the list, we have a hiker. No, wait, not a hiker, a hunter.
I love these stories.
I think these are interesting. There's been quite a few this season. I think hunting for deer has ended, if I'm correct. This is what day is this here? Tuesday the 6th. I think it ended over the weekend.
Yeah, I've seen a few with the deer hunting. I've seen a few like, can you identify these people? Like, game camera pictures of people hunting on private land or doing stuff they're not supposed to do.
Yeah, it's always interesting.
But this one here is so Sunday, November 13th. New Hampshire State Police was notified of a male subject who inadvertently shot himself in the leg. So I guess this was a 23-year-old person he was target shooting, and he had inadvertently shot himself in the leg while manipulating the pistol in his jacket pocket. So I used to laugh at people that would do this, but remember that time I hiked with you, Stomp, and you accidentally shot yourself in the leg with the bear spray? So
you just always going to bring that one up.
I don't judge people, but I guess after further investigation, it was determined that the gentleman was target shooting with his father and other family members in a sand pit in Shelburne, and he was manipulating the pistol in his jacket pocket, which caused it to go off. So a good rule of thumb is that if you have a loaded handgun in your jacket pocket, do not fiddle with it, folks.
Don't manipulate
you can
it.
Shoot yourself.
Yeah, exactly. No manipulation.
Yes. Anyway.
It's not a fidget spinner. It's a freaking gun.
I guess he's okay.
Yeah. Amen.
That's
Good
it.
stuff.
So,
wow. Do we still have our special guest here?
I'm here.
We've been dominating the airwaves.
That's all right.
Mike, I'm so proud of you. You made it through this not feeling well. I hope you feel better.
yeah, I feel okay. It's just the cough is annoying, but I'm invigorated. I'm going to get my strength training in. I'm turning over a new leaf, Sarah, and I'm going to get jacked.
Okay.
Or I'm at least going to be able to do a plank for 90 seconds.
Contact me when you need a coach.
I will.
Oh, that's great. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you.
Mike, feel better.
All right.
You bet. And
That's a
we'll be
wrap.
seeing
All right.
everybody next week before the holiday break.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn more about the topics covered in today's show, please check out the show notes and safety information at SLASRpodcast.com. That's SLASR podcast.com. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next week for another great show. Until then, on behalf of Mike and Stomp, get out there and crush some mega peaks.
Now covered in scratches, blisters, and bug bites, Chris Staff wanted to complete his most challenging day hike ever.
Fish and Game officers say the hiker from Florida activated an emergency beacon yesterday morning. He was hiking along the Appalachian Trail when the weather started to get worse. Officials say the snow was piled up to 3 feet in some spots, and there was a wind chill of -1 degree.
And there's 3 words to describe this race. Do we all know what they are?
Here's Lieutenant James Nealon, New Hampshire Fish and Game. Lieutenant, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see people make when they're heading out on the trails to hike here in New Hampshire?
It seems to me the most common is being unprepared, and I think if they just simply visited hikesafe.com and got a list of the 10 essential items and had those in their packs, they probably would have no need to ever call us at all.